Have you ever opened your eyes in the morning and already knew your marriage was over before you even moved an inch? That's the only way I can describe it. My wife never came home that night, and the message waiting for me the next morning said more than silence ever could. It didn't explain where she was. It didn't say why she disappeared. It was just one short sentence, and it landed harder than any hit I've taken in my life. 13 years. That's how long I carried the load, kept this house together, trusted her without hesitation. And then one text turned my entire life into something that felt like a crime scene. There was no shouting, no pleading, no back and forth. Just that sharp, icy clarity only a man who's been betrayed really understands. If you've ever felt that kind of gut-level shock, stay with me. Hit subscribe. Because what I uncovered next didn't just explain where she'd been, it peeled back everything. That message came in at 7:12 the following morning. But to understand what it did to me, you've got to rewind to the night before. I'm 46 years old. I live in Cedar Park. I make my living fixing broken refrigerators and air conditioners. My life isn't flashy, but it's dependable. It's solid. Or at least I thought it was. That evening was supposed to be routine. Nothing special. I cooked a simple dinner for the two of us, the same kind of meal I've made 100 times. She called while heading out of work, laughing like everything was fine. Said she was grabbing drinks with coworkers and told me not to wait up. So I didn't push. I didn't argue. I wrapped her plate and put it in the fridge, then sat alone at the kitchen table and ate my dinner. Toby stayed by the front door, ears popping up every time headlights passed the house. 9:30 turned into 11. 11 slipped into 1 in the morning. The TV was on, but it wasn't really on, it was just noise filling the space. I kept glancing at the driveway, listening for the sound of tires crunching on gravel. By 3 a.m., it was just me, Toby, the porch light, and that harsh blue glow from the stove clock. 3:01, 3:12. 3:27, that's when it sank in. I wasn't giving her space. I wasn't being the laid-back husband who trusts without question. I was just a man sitting alone in the dark, staring at the clock and counting minutes instead of sleeping. Eventually, staring at an empty doorway wasn't enough anymore. I picked up my phone and typed the simplest message I could manage. Everything okay? No long explanation. No guilt. Just 3 words from a husband who hadn't slept all night. I watched the screen like it was keeping me alive. No typing bubble. No read receipt. Nothing. Suddenly the house felt both too loud and completely silent at the same time. The wall clock above the TV slammed each second into the room like a tiny hammer. Tick. 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 Toby let out one short bark at the door, then lowered his head with a low, uneasy whine, like even he could sense something wasn't right. I walked over and cracked the front door open. Cool Texas night air washed over my face, empty and still, with distant taillights sliding through the dark. The porch light cast a weak little circle onto the driveway, lighting up the exact spot where her car should have been. I checked my phone again. Still nothing. No call. No text. No excuse. Standing there in that doorway, with the clock pounding away behind me, something inside my chest quietly gave out. I didn't fall asleep, because I never really slept. The alarm went off at 6 a.m. like it always does, and somehow that felt insulting. Same sound. Completely different life. I swung my legs out of bed, and they felt heavier than ever. I walked into the kitchen on autopilot. Toby followed behind me, his nails clicking on the tile. I poured myself black coffee the way I always do, except this time my hand shook just enough to make the mug rattle against the counter. That's when my phone buzzed. One message. From her. I'm fine. Don't be dramatic. That was it. No apology. No explanation. No acknowledgement of the night I'd spent worrying myself sick. Just one sentence that took hours of fear and crushed them flat. Dramatic. That word hit harder than any insult she could have thrown. I'd been awake all night imagining her in a ditch, in an ER, or worse. And now I was just the overreacting husband. Something inside me straightened up right then. If caring where my wife slept made me dramatic, so be it. But I wasn't going to be stupid on top of that. If she wouldn't tell me where she'd been, I knew exactly what would. I'm not the snooping type. I don't dig through purses. I don't read messages over shoulders. But that morning, staring at "Don't be dramatic," I realized blind trust wasn't something she'd earned anymore. So I opened an app one almost never use. Uber. At first, it felt pathetic. Desperate, even. Then I saw it. Her profile. Her ride history. Thin blue lines traced across a map. Times. Locations. Numbers. Cold facts that don't care about excuses or feelings. One ride from the night before. Pickup, 11:42 p.m. downtown office. Okay. Drop off, a residential street I didn't recognize at first. Copper Ridge Lane. I zoomed in. And there it was. A name attached to the address from an old ride note. Lucas Bennett. I'd met him once. Shaken his hand at a company barbecue. He was the nice guy from her team. The one she'd waved off with a smile. He's just a coworker. He's married. Relax. Standing there in my kitchen, exhausted and holding cold coffee, that word replayed in my head. Relax. Last night, it sounded harmless. That morning, it felt like gasoline poured all over my marriage, with a match already struck. Staring at that Uber screen, I saw two choices staring back at me. Blow up her phone like a teenager, or act like a man who finally accepts the truth. So I did the simplest thing. I took screenshots. The time. The pickup. The drop-off. Lucas's name. That blue line tracing the route. Every detail. Then I created a new folder on my phone. I didn't name it evidence. I named it truth. Because that's what I was done arguing with. Feelings can be twisted. Words can be spun. Screenshots don't lie. I didn't text her. I didn't ask why. I didn't send a single angry message she could twist later. I set my phone down, grabbed my work bag, and headed to my first job. Out on the road, fixing other people's broken AC units, I felt something I hadn't felt all night. Control. As I tightened screws and checked thermostats, one thought settled in clear and steady: this was the line. I wasn't chasing her version of events anymore. She could come home and face mine. By the time lunch rolled around, I still hadn't slept, but my mind was calm. If she wanted to throw away our marriage for a guy from work, that was her choice. But I was done pretending the door would always be wide open whenever she felt like wandering back. Most men spend their lunch break sitting in their trucks, eating fast food and scrolling through their phones. I spent mine redrawing the front boundary of my life. I pulled into a small hardware store just off the main road, the kind of place that still smells like steel, oil, and fresh-cut wood. I chose a deadbolt that wasn't flashy, just heavy and dependable. Paid in cash. The older guy behind the counter cracked a joke about keeping criminals out. I nodded and smiled. He had no idea who that lock was really for. By 12:23 p.m. I was back on my porch, removing the same lock she'd used for 13 years. Toby sat close behind me, head tilted, like he was standing watch right alongside me. Sunlight caught the new brass as I slid it into place, bright and final. Inside the house, I set her key right in the center of the kitchen table. Such a small piece of metal, yet it suddenly represented everything: entry, trust, belonging. And she no longer had any of it. I let out a single breath. Not shaky. Not dramatic. Just deep and weighted. The kind of breath a man takes when he's finished being overlooked. I wasn't trying to stage a scene or make a point for effect. I was setting a line. If she came home that night, she could knock. This time, the door wouldn't open just because she decided to show up. The rest of the workday dragged like I was moving through thick water. I repaired 3 units, filled out 2 invoices, and nodded through conversations I barely heard. Every buzz from my phone wasn't her. By late afternoon, I headed home earlier than usual, not to relax, but to wait. I pulled the living room curtains almost closed, leaving only a narrow strip for the fading light. The house settled into that muted orange glow right before sunset disappears behind the rooftops. Toby stayed at my feet, alert to every shift in my mood. I didn't turn on the TV. Didn't play music. I sat in silence, listening for sounds I'd known by heart for years: gravel crunching, a car door shutting, footsteps on a walkway we'd swept together more times than I could count. When an engine finally slowed in front of the house, my heart didn't spike. That surprised me. The panic was gone. In its place was something colder, flatter, steadier. I stood, walked to the entryway, and positioned myself behind the frosted glass. For once, I wasn't the one hoping to be let in. I heard her before I saw her, the slide of her purse strap, the familiar jingle of keys, that small sigh she always let out at the door. Then the sound I'd been waiting for. Metal met metal. Click. Stop. She tried again, this time with more force. The lock didn't budge. There was a pause, 3, maybe 4 seconds, long enough to imagine the confusion settling in. Then the handle shook. Ethan? She said my name like she was testing the room, like this might be some joke I'd pull. Another attempt. Nothing. Babe, come on. Seriously, open the door. She laughed at the end, thin and uneasy. I stayed silent, my palm against the wall, feeling my own heartbeat steady and strong. Toby lifted his head but didn't bark. Even he seemed to know this wasn't his moment. The knocking came faster now, sharper. Her voice edged toward irritation. Why is the door locked? Did something break? Ethan, come on. Yeah. Something broke. Just not the lock. And standing on the other side of that door, she was starting to understand. After the rattling came the script. It seemed like some people always have an excuse ready. It's not what you think. Always is. Her voice softened, trembled just right. My phone died. I crashed on a couch. One excuse layered on top of another, like she was trying to cover a stain instead of clean it. The longer she talked, the less she sounded like a wife explaining herself and the more she sounded like someone rehearsing a pitch. I stood inches away, listening to her breath press through the door between us. No tears yet. Just that wounded tone she used whenever she wanted me to fold. Ethan, please. You're making this bigger than it is. I was just exhausted. Funny thing was, my chest didn't crack this time. That damage had already been done the night before, standing in the doorway with my phone glowing in my hand. What I felt now wasn't pain, it was distance. I kept my hand on the deadbolt and didn't answer. Let her words sit there unanswered. If it truly wasn't what I thought, she was about to have her chance. I slid the chain just enough so my voice could carry through. The door stayed mostly closed on purpose. Who is he? I asked. No shouting. No insults. Just one clean question. She went quiet so fast it felt like someone hit a mute button. He's just a coworker, she rushed out. I've told you about him. You're being. Uber drove you, I said, cutting her off. That pause was different. This wasn't confusion anymore. This was calculation. I could almost hear her trying to measure what I knew, how much I'd seen, which lie might still fit. What are you talking about? She finally asked. The ride at 11:42, I said calmly. From your office. To Copper Ridge. To Lucas Bennett's house. Silence. No crying. No denial. Nothing at all. And in that nothing, I got the closest thing to truth she'd offered in a full day. Uber doesn't lie, I said quietly. So maybe, for once, you shouldn't either. I let the words sit there between us, heavy and final. The door stayed shut. Then she switched tactics. "Ethan, please. Just let me in. We'll talk inside." That's how it always used to work. Problems came indoors, doors closed, and somehow fixing things became my responsibility. "Not this time." "No," I said. "We talk now." 3 words. Even I heard the change in my voice, steady, controlled, and finished. She wasn't used to this version of me. I could hear it in how her words started tripping over each other. "Why are you acting like this? You're making a scene. Can we just?" "Who is he?" I asked again. Same question. Same flat tone. No room to dodge. There was a small sound on the other side of the door, like she'd begun a sentence and swallowed it whole. That's what guilt sounds like, words that never quite make it out. For the first time in years, I wasn't chasing her explanation. She was answering to me now, and the door was still closed. What she said next told me exactly where her priorities were. Don't tell his wife. Not "I'm sorry." Not "let me explain." Not "I hurt you." Just fear of being exposed from another direction. I let out a quiet, empty laugh. "That's interesting," I said, "because I think your friend's wife might really want to know." That hit hard. I didn't need to see her to know her eyes went wide. Why would you? Why would she? What did you do? Panic finally broke through, sharp and brittle. Not panic over what she'd done to me, but panic over what could happen to her if the truth got loose. "Nothing," I said. "Yet." Somewhere down the street, I heard a garage door roll shut. Another neighbor wrapping up a normal day. Life moving on while mine balanced on a blade. That's when it clicked for her. This wasn't about me being dramatic. This was about her job. Her reputation. Her little secret from the office crashing straight into the real world. For the first time since she showed up, she sounded genuinely scared, and it still wasn't about losing me. It was about losing everything else. You'd think this is where I'd explode. Yelling. Swearing. Calling her every name I could think of. I didn't. I stayed level. No insults. No raised voice. I went back to the one thing she couldn't bend. Facts. "You left your office at 11:42 p.m., I said. "Your Uber dropped you on Copper Ridge at 12:07. She jumped in immediately. "I told you, I was exhausted. We were just talking. I didn't feel safe driving. I didn't chase that. I didn't argue the details. I stayed right where I was." "You didn't text," I said. "You didn't call. You didn't come home." Every time she tried to pull the story sideways, how stressed she was, how I didn't understand, how it was just one night, I dragged it back to the timestamps. The silence. The basic things a wife doesn't ignore if she cares who's sleeping on the other side of the door. Behind me, Toby let out a low, uneasy whine, like even he felt the tension in how calm I'd become. Funny thing was, that calm scared her more than shouting ever could. As she kept stumbling through excuses, my phone buzzed in my hand. Different tone. Different vibration. I glanced down, expecting spam or a work alert. Instead, I saw a last name I recognized instantly. Bennett. For a second, my brain didn't connect the dots. Then it did. Lucas's last name. Which meant the message wasn't from my wife. And it wasn't from him. It was from her. His wife. I opened it. You should see where they went. No greeting. No context. Just that line and an attachment sitting right beneath it. My thumb hovered over the screen. On the other side of the door, my wife was still talking, still trying to patch holes in a story that never held water. "Ethan, are you even listening to me?" she snapped. I didn't answer. Because in that moment, she wasn't the one I needed to hear anymore. It was the woman who had nothing to gain by telling me the truth. I tapped the attachment. First photo. Grainy. Low light. but clear where it mattered. A hotel parking lot. You recognize the type instantly. Not run down. Not high-end. One of those mid-range chains near the highway, neon sign humming over a half-full lot. Front and center was her coat. I knew it without hesitation. I'd bought it for her last winter. Navy blue. A little too big in the shoulders. She was standing there in it, turned toward a man I didn't need a second look to recognize. Lucas. His hand was wrapped around her arm, leaning in close. Not coworker space. Not casual conversation. The kind of closeness you only share with someone you're not supposed to be that close to. At the bottom of the photo, 12:37 a.m. While I'd been pacing our living room, staring at the door, she'd been standing under that neon glow with him. Behind the door, I could still hear her voice, talking about being tired. About falling asleep on a couch. But my body had gone still. No shaking. No shouting. Just that cold, locked-in calm that hits when your eyes finally catch up to what your gut knew all along. And there was more. I swiped. Second photo. The hotel lobby. Bright lights. Front desk. Logo blowing on the wall. They were standing side by side now. No hiding. No sneaking. She was looking down at the counter, probably his card, while he leaned in close enough that their shoulders touched. That alone would have been enough. But there was a third picture. Elevator doors. Half closed. She was inside. He stood close to her, arm around her waist in a familiar way. She wasn't pulling away. She wasn't uncomfortable. She was leaning into him. Tell me again about that couch. Then another message appeared from his wife, right beneath the photos. Room 314. Charged to his card. Checkout 7:08 a.m. There it was. Not implied. Not guessed. Documented. She hadn't been stranded. She hadn't passed out somewhere by accident. She had checked into a hotel and stayed there until morning. On the other side of the door, my wife finally went silent. Maybe she felt the shift in the air. Because by then, there wasn't a single version of her story left that could survive the truth glowing in my hand. I stared at that last message from his wife. Room 314. Checkout, 7:08 a.m. I didn't say anything at first. I just stood there, breathing, aware of every inhale like it was echoing inside my chest. For a moment, that was all there was, air going in, air going out. Then I looked back at the door. She felt it. I know she did. Something shifted in the space between us, and it scared her, because when she spoke again, her voice barely carried. Ethan, what are you staring at? I ignored the question. Instead, I gave her the numbers. 7. 0. 8. A.M. I said it slow, dragging each part out so it couldn't slip past her. Checkout time. On the other side of the door, she sucked in a breath too fast, too sharp. The kind of breath people take when the ground suddenly drops. So you didn't spend the night at his place, I said. You left a hotel at 7:08 in the morning. She rushed to fill the silence. Ethan, it didn't mean anything. And there it was. Not I didn't do it. Not your misunderstanding. Just, it didn't mean anything. 13 years of marriage. 13 years of showing up, paying bills, keeping my word. Reduced to 5 throwaway words. I stared at the thin slice of light glowing under the door, and something settled in my chest, heavy but clear. If it meant nothing to her, then she just explained exactly how much our marriage was worth to her too. That was when I knew I couldn't say the next part through a closed door. I unlatched the chain and opened it just enough for us to face each other. Not enough to let her in. Just enough to let the truth out. A hand's width. She stood there with red-rimmed eyes, mascara streaked, looking smaller than I remembered. Her shoulders were pulled in tight, one hand wrapped around her purse strap like it was keeping her upright. Ethan, please, she said quietly. We can fix this. I made a mistake. I held her eyes and didn't flinch. Didn't look away. Didn't bend. A mistake? I said. One drink is a mistake. Saying the wrong thing is a mistake. I paused, then finished the thought. You planned this. You lied. You disappeared. I let that hang before adding the rest. You spent the night with him. Then returned as if nothing had happened. Her mouth moved, but no sound came out. It didn't mean anything, I said again. If that's true, I continued, my voice steady, then walking away should be easy. Her fingers trembled against the doorframe. Mine stayed still. That was the first time I realized I wasn't scared anymore, not of being alone, not of losing her. After I said it, I reached over to the side table and picked up the envelope I'd left there earlier. I'd written her name on it during my lunch break, sitting in my truck. My hand hadn't shaken. The pen pressed hard, like I needed the paper to feel it. I held the envelope between us. Take this. She hesitated, then accepted it with both hands, cautious, like it might cut her. Inside were the first papers from my lawyer. Not final. Not dramatic. Just real. On top, I'd slipped in a business card for a locksmith near her sister's place. No bags packed. No clothes tossed outside. I wasn't trying to embarrass her. I wasn't trying to punish her. I was just finished pretending. This is real, she whispered, scanning the page. Her knees buckled slightly, like the world had shifted without warning. That was the exact moment our marriage stopped being a conversation and became a procedure. Not a fight. An ending. She pulled the envelope tight against her chest. You're ending everything over one night? She snapped. Over one mistake? That word again. I shook my head. No, I said. I'm ending it over every lie that made that night possible. She froze. You could see the realization land, sharp and deep. Like she'd been bracing for one kind of pain and got another entirely. Every I'm working late. Every you're overreacting. Every time she told me to calm down while stepping further away. Her breathing went uneven, not just fear now, but understanding. She knew I'd been watching. Listening. This isn't about a hotel, I said, nodding toward the envelope. It's about who you had to become to walk into it. I sealed the envelope with my thumb. You chose him, I said. I'm choosing myself. She had nothing left to say. Behind her, life went on like it always does. A garbage truck screeched to a stop. Metal bins slammed. A car door shut. Somewhere down the street, a kid laughed. Just another weekday. She glanced around then, suddenly aware of the world again. She shifted her body, trying to hide the envelope. Can we not do this out here? She whispered. What if someone sees? I didn't raise my voice. I didn't whisper either. I'm not making a scene, I said. I'm just being honest. There was a time I would have cared more about appearances than truth. About keeping things neat and quiet. Not anymore. After a long pause, her voice changed, less shaky, more careful. Ethan, don't tell her, she said. Lucas's wife, she's unstable. She'll destroy everything. Everything. Not us. Everything else. I heard the fear beneath it: reputation, careers, fallout. Everything? I asked. Does that include our marriage, or was that already expendable? She looked away, jaw clenched, eyes fixed on the street. That answer was loud enough. You don't get it, she muttered. I do, I said. You're more afraid of what this costs you publicly than what it cost us privately. When people are backed into a corner, their real priorities show themselves fast. She wasn't scared of losing me. Not really. What terrified her was losing the setup she'd built, the overlap, the secrets, the comfort of having two versions of her life running at the same time. Once I saw that clearly, letting her go stopped feeling like a failure and started feeling like relief. By then, I'd been awake more than 24 hours. But the truth is, I hadn't slept right in years. Not the kind of sleep a man gets when he feels safe under his own roof. I leaned my shoulder against the doorframe and let the weight of everything settle in. Not panic. Not noise. Just a heavy, steady knowing. I stayed up all night, I said quietly, wondering if you were lying in a ditch. I paused, then said the rest. I worried she might be in the hospital or worse. She opened her mouth, but I didn't give her space to interrupt. I took my vows seriously, I said. Maybe that makes me old-fashioned. Maybe it makes me boring. But they mattered to me. Her eyes dropped to the porch boards. Mine stayed where they were. All those nights you said you were working late, I believed you. Every time you told me not to be dramatic, I backed off. I exhaled. That part's on me. I straightened and nodded toward the envelope in her hands. But this? I said. This is me finally standing where I should have stood a long time ago. She didn't argue. She didn't defend herself. She just bowed her head. And for the first time, I felt proud of myself, not embarrassed for being the one who stayed loyal, but proud that I finally stopped apologizing for it. Something shifted after that. The air changed. She stepped back slightly, like she needed space to breathe. Or maybe she just couldn't stand that close to the truth anymore. That's when the tears finally came. Real ones. They were the kind that used to undo me. The kind that made me reach for tissues, wrap my arms around her, say we'd figure it out. This time, I didn't move. I didn't hand her a towel. I handed her an exit. Clean. Quiet. On her feet instead of broken. You have choices, I said. You can call your sister. Call a friend. Call whoever you were actually with last night. I held her eyes. But you're not walking back into this house pretending nothing happened. She swallowed hard. Her throat worked around words she either couldn't form or didn't want to say. Silence settled between us. Not the panicked silence from the night before, this was different. This was the silence that comes right before a verdict. Behind me, Toby shifted, his nails clicking once against the hardwood. Even he seemed to sense it, waiting. I didn't push her. I didn't rush her. I just held the line and let her decide which side of it she was going to stand on. While she stood there frozen, clutching the envelope, my phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't her. Different vibration. Different number. I glanced down and saw a name I'd only seen once earlier that morning. His wife. I opened the message. Thank you for confirming. I'm filing today. That was it. No emojis. No explanation. Just one sentence from a woman who had clearly already done her crying before she ever typed it. I stared at the screen longer than I needed to, not because I was shocked. I wasn't anymore. But because it hit me. This wreckage wasn't just mine. 2 marriages. 2 homes. 2 lives cracked open because 2 people wanted something on the side. Court dates. Paperwork. Dividing what used to be shared down the middle. And it all started with a single line of text that fit neatly on my screen. I didn't shake. I didn't fall apart. I just felt a deep, quiet shift. We weren't debating what happened anymore. We were standing inside the consequences. There I was, in my doorway, her in front of me, his wife on my phone, and one old sentence came back like an echo I couldn't shake. He's married. Relax. She'd said it months ago, laughing in our kitchen while stirring sauce on the stove. I remembered the way she rolled her eyes, like I was some insecure kid for even questioning it. Not a big deal, she'd added. Just co-workers. Just drinks. Just late nights. Funny how not a big deal turned into 2 sets of divorce papers and a hotel checkout at 7:08 in the morning. I closed my eyes for a couple seconds. Not to escape it, but to finally see the pattern clearly. Every time something felt off, she covered it with the same blanket. Relax. Don't be dramatic. You're overthinking. Turns out I wasn't. I was underreacting. He's married, relax wasn't reassurance. It was a smokescreen. And now that the smoke was gone, all that remained was the cost. My trust. Her name. And the version of our life I used to believe in. Watching her clutch that envelope like it was some unfair punishment, something finally locked into place inside me. I'm not a doormat. I'm a man who fixes things for a living: fridges, AC units, busted heaters. Most problems just need a new part, a reset, a little patience. But every technician knows there's a moment when you stop trying to repair and you tell the customer the truth. This one's done. You're better off replacing it. That's where I was. My marriage didn't die in one night at a hotel. It died slowly, under every small lie she buried beneath relax and you're overreacting. Some things can't be fixed. Not because you don't want to, but because the damage isn't mechanical. It's intentional. There's no warranty on a heart. You can't return it and say, this one came cracked. I walked to the counter, picked up the paperwork my lawyer had emailed, and signed the first page with a steady hand. I wasn't signing away my life. I was signing away my role as her safety net. After she left with the envelope, the house went quiet. I fed Toby. Rinsed my coffee mug. Then sat at the kitchen table with my phone and a business card my buddy Adam had given me months earlier. Good guy, he'd said. Straight shooter. No nonsense. Back then, I'd laughed it off. Now I typed the number. Law offices of Parker and Cole, a woman answered. My voice sounded calm, almost too calm. Yeah. My name's Ethan Harper, I said. My wife checked into a hotel last night with a coworker. I've got proof. I think it's time I talked to someone. They transferred me. The lawyer didn't waste time. Short questions. Direct. I gave the same kind of answers. He told me to forward everything. Screenshots from Uber. Photos from the hotel. The text from Lucas's wife. I sat at the kitchen table, thumb moving over my phone like a machine, sending each piece of proof out into the world. Ugly, undeniable truth. One by one, they left my hands. Minutes later, the lawyer's email pinged back. A checklist. Assets. Accounts. Dates. What to gather. What not to say. It didn't feel like revenge. It didn't feel like triumph. It felt methodical. Like prepping tools before a job. Measuring twice, cutting once. Except this time, the thing I was dismantling was my own marriage, deliberately, carefully. I stared at that email like it was a blueprint for demolition. 13 years, laid out in lines and folders. I stood, grabbed my phone, and started the work. Step 1, inventory. I move through the house differently now. Not a husband. Not a man holding on to shared memories. A man cataloging what belonged to him, what could be counted, what could be documented. The truck in the driveway. Snap. The title in the junk drawer. Snap. The old SUV we still owed money on. Snap. AC unit I installed myself. Washer and dryer. TV. Tools in the garage. Serial numbers, model numbers, mileage. Snap. 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 House documents. Mortgage papers. Insurance policies. Closing statements once celebrated over takeout. Snap. Every page captured, exactly as instructed. Then a separate list, her things. Jewelry I'd bought. Laptop from her job. Furniture she picked out herself. Stuff that was always more hers than ours. Suddenly, the lines weren't emotional anymore. They were sharp. Practical. Clean. Everything we had shared became 2 columns in my notes app. Not punishment. Just boundaries. What ended with her, and what remained with me. When I finished photographing, cataloging, noting, the house felt hollow. Same walls. Same furniture. But no longer ours. I sat back down at the table. A blank sticky note stared up at me. I wrote quickly. Ethan, don't second-guess this. Her choices don't define your worth. Your worth, her lies. It felt corny at first. Like self-help fluff I'd have mocked before. But I knew the nights ahead, nights when I'd wonder if I'd blown everything up for nothing. This note wasn't for today. It was for that night, months from now. I slid it into the folder with the emails and screenshots. Toby jumped up, paws on my thigh. Those big, steady eyes staring up at me, silent but certain, I'm here. You're still my person. I scratched behind his ears and exhaled. If no one else was going to be in my corner, at least one voice, loyal, uncomplicated, unjudging, was on my side. Later that evening, the phone rang. Her name on the screen. Same photo. Different world. I let it ring twice. Then answered. Yeah? Calm. Steady. Her voice shattered. Ragged. She'd been crying for hours. Ethan, we can fix this. Counseling. I'll block his number. I'll do anything you want. Please, don't throw us away. For a heartbeat, the past tried to reach me. Christmases. Road trips. Inside jokes. Tiny moments that didn't disappear instantly. Then the hotel hallway hit me. Room 314. 7:08 a.m. I fix things for a living, I said. I know the difference between a repair and a replace. She went silent. Then came the sobbing, messy, loud, relentless. I didn't hang up. I let her spill. Let her cry herself out. How scared she'd been. How it had spiraled. How she never meant to hurt me. I listened. Didn't argue. Didn't give hope I didn't have. When she finally ran out of words, I said the only thing I felt. Take care. And with that, I ended the call. Along with it, any version of us I had left even halfway believing in. The next day, the world carried on as if nothing had changed. Sunlight stretched across the porch, catching dust on the railing I'd been meaning to sand. Down the block, a lawnmower hummed. Familiar, steady. Gasoline and fresh-cut grass drifted through the open kitchen window. I filled Toby's water bowl, watched the stream run clear, then slow, then stop. He lapped it up. Tail thumping. Completely untouchable by lawyers, hotels, lies. Delivery truck rumbled past. Kids shouted to one another on bikes. Mrs. Ellis bent to retrieve her mail. Life went on. Cedar Park didn't care that my marriage had been marked for demolition. And that's when it really hit me. The world doesn't collapse when your heart does. The sky doesn't darken. The earth doesn't crack. It's just you who changes. I set the bowl down, rubbed Toby's head, barefoot on cool tile, and let that sink in. Outside, everything the same. Inside, nothing was. The next morning, I woke to a list I'd written weeks ago, not divorce. House stuff. Change AC filter. Tighten loose hinge. Fix the slow drip in the kitchen faucet. So I did. Pulled the vent cover. Swapped the filter. Felt the air hum cleaner. Tightened the front door hinge that had been clicking. Crawled under the sink, fixed the drip. No drama. No fanfare. Just the small, necessary work that kept the house standing. And somewhere between wiping my hands and putting the toolbox away, it hit me. This place still needs someone who shows up. The dog still needs feeding. The bills still need paying. The work still needs doing. Being her husband had been part of my life. Not all of me. I'm a man who fixes things. Maybe that doesn't mean fixing us anymore. Maybe it means fixing what's left of me. And that, I realized, is still a job worth doing. Later, I stared at my phone longer than I wanted to admit. Lawyer. Boss. A couple friends. Then my eyes landed on a name I've had in my phone since day one. Mom. I didn't hesitate. I hit call before the doubt could creep in. She answered on the second ring. Hey, honey. Everything okay? I didn't spill everything. No room numbers, no timestamps. Just the bare truth. She cheated. I've seen enough. I'm ending it. Silence. Then a long, weary sigh. The kind only a mother can give. I'm proud of you, she said. You stood your ground. I stayed quiet. Let her words sink. Settled somewhere under my ribs, where the hurt had been gnawing all day. You hear me, she added. Leaving doesn't make you weak. Staying in a place where you aren't respected, that would be weak. Yeah, I said finally. I hear you, Mom. She worried next. Money. The house. If I was eating. The usual things mothers worry about when their sons' worlds start to crack. I'll be okay, I said softly. Don't lose sleep over me. After we hung up, the house stayed quiet. But it didn't feel empty. Not like before. That night already felt different. I flipped the porch light off earlier than usual. No more leaving it on like a signal fire for someone who had already chosen a different shore. The new deadbolt clicked shut clean and solid. Bright brass. Sharp edges. A lock for a new chapter. In the bedroom, Toby circled at the foot of the bed, then curled against my feet like he was clocking in for duty. I lay on my back, staring at the ceiling, waiting for the familiar knot in my chest to tighten. It didn't. It didn't vanish either. Just quieter. My mind wandered, of course. Hotel doors. 7:08 a.m., signatures on paper. But it didn't spin out of control like it had the night before. No checking the driveway. No panic jumps at every passing car. At some point, without noticing, I slipped under. Not a full night's sleep. Not yet. But 3 hours where the dreams didn't shake me awake. For the first time in years, the house actually felt like it was on my side. The next morning, my phone buzzed. Not a lie, not a plea, not an apology. Just an email from my lawyer. Subject, next steps, Harper. Dates. Forms. Filing order. Who signs what? How long each stage usually takes. Mediation. Division. Final hearing. Clean bullet points for a messy, human problem. I sat at the kitchen table with a pen, checking off what was already done. Proof gathered. Assets documented. Separate account opened. Attachments ready. Then I added the screenshots, hotel photos, and text from Lucas's wife to the shared drive link he'd sent. No drama. No commentary. Just facts. For months, maybe years, life had felt like it was happening to me. That morning, for the first time, I felt like I was steering again. I couldn't control every outcome. But the process? That was mine. Eventually, you learn that leaving the door half open is worse than just closing it. She still texted sometimes. Little reminders. I can't believe you're doing this. We were good before this. I miss us. Every message felt like someone poking at a bruise. I could have argued. I could have unleashed everything I was thinking. But I didn't. I typed 4 words. I wish you well. No hooks. No sarcasm. Just truth. I don't hate you. I just don't want this anymore. Hit send. Watch it deliver. Then I opened settings. Scrolled down. Blocked her. No ceremony. One decision. No more late night messages. No more emotional landmines. And the quiet that followed? Not emptiness. Space. Mine. A few days later, I clipped Toby's leash on and stepped outside just before sunset. Same sidewalk. Same trimmed lawns. Texas sky turning soft orange and purple as the heat finally eased. Comfortable. Not suffocating. We walked our usual loop. Toby trotted ahead, nose in the grass, tail wagging lazy. I let him lead. For once, I wasn't in a hurry to get anywhere. A truck rolled by. Leo from down the street leaned out the window. Hang in there, man. I nodded, half smiled. I'm good. And this time, I wasn't lying. We passed the little park. Kids on swings. Someone grilling. Music drifting from a backyard. Life happening. Not ours. Just life. Toby tugged toward a patch of grass. I laughed, let him drag me a few extra steps. Through the fading light, we walked. Me. The dog. This new version of my life. Not fixed. Not perfect. But mine. So let me be clear, I didn't end my marriage over one night. I ended it over every lie it took to get there. Every relax. Every you're overreacting. Every late message that wasn't where she said she was. The hotel room was just the receipt. I'm not perfect. I've made my own mistakes. But I showed up. Paid the bills. Kept my vows. At some point, a man has to choose, husband or doormat. I chose self-respect. If you've ever felt that gut punch, the chest hollow, the life you thought you had dropping straight through, hear me now. You're not crazy. You're not weak. You're not alone. You are allowed to draw a line and say, this is where it stops. As for Lucas? That hotel wasn't the worst thing I found out about him. There's more to that story. More than even his wife knew. If any of this hits home, leave a comment. I hear you. Subscribe. Stay with me. Because it started with one message on my phone. What came after? Men like us need to hear it.